Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to have a discussion on functions in Python. Suppose you assume that you are going to write a program to find the average of marks of 5 subjects and grade secured by a particular student. Then how many statements will you write to find the sum of students one statement and to find the average another statement? And for the calculation of grade, let us assume that some 5 decision-making statements are there, right? So totally 7 statements you assume to calculate the grade of a student. If you are having 50 students in a class, then to calculate the grade of 50 students and to calculate the grade every student carries 7 statements. So 50 to 7, 350 statements you have to write in the program. Is it not tedious to write 350 statements repeatedly, or a set of statements repeatedly, but with different values to calculate the grade of 50 students in a program? So this is what actually the problem with the old procedure-oriented programming languages, and now the functions is making that work easy. So the purpose of writing functions is to write the content one time and to execute them whenever they are required with different values. So what is a function? Function is a collection of statements called by a name to carry out a specific task. As I mentioned, to calculate the grade of a student by taking the marks of the student as input, it can take 7 statements. So that set of 7 statements called by a common name, for example grade calculation, can be considered as a function, and its specific task is to calculate the grade of a set of students or one student and with 5 marks. So why we are going for the function? As I explained to you, to avoid the repetition of set of statements to carry out a task in an application. So in an application, if a set of statements are repeatedly executed for a purpose for different values, so statements are same but values are different. In that case, instead of rewriting the code again and again, you can write the function once and you can use them, or you can call them whenever they are required by passing different values. There are two important advantages in using a function. First one, you can achieve reusability. So reusability is the capability of any entity by writing once or created once and used n number of times, or reused n number of times. So when you are writing a function one time for calculating the grade of a student, then you can reuse it for n number of students in that class or n number of students in the school or college, whatever it is preferred, and without repeating them in the application. So once you write the function, then that can be reused n number of times with the different values. So that's what called as reusability. Next one, if you are writing the function, your application is getting modularized. What is the modularization in writing applications is, if you are writing the code of an application from top to bottom as a collection of statements in the same sequence, then if you are making any small change in a particular statement, the statements which are using that particular statement, or using that particular variable or function or any entity you are changing throughout the application, has to be changed, right? So you are making change in one statement, and that change will affect the whole application if you are writing that application as a collection or sequence of statements in a continuous fashion. Instead, you assume that you are writing a function and that function is an independent module, and suppose if any problem or any issues happening in that function, it will affect only that function. It will not penetrate into any other entities in the program. So modularization is actually the process of dividing an application into small pieces or components, so that it is easy to manage, and if any change or any problem or issue or error is coming in one module, that is not going to affect the other modules or not going to affect the other functions. So these are the two important advantages of using functions in our applications. Now let us move to Python function. What is a Python function? Python function is again a block of statements. It's a collection or group of statements, accepts a set of values. Accepts a set of values. They are called as parameters. And in other programming languages, we are using interchangeably the parameters or the terms arguments to represent the values that are taken or processed by a function. But in Python, parameters are used in a purpose for a purpose, and arguments are used for another purpose, but in the context of function. I will explain it a little later in the next topic. So this function will accept this set of values or parameters or arguments and process them and returning a value. So any block of statements capable to accept a set of values and process that values and return a result out of that processing is called Python function. If you say Python function, there are two important aspects in any Python function. First one, function definition, and next one is function call or invocation. What is function definition? So function definition is an act of or process of writing a set of statements that is going to implement the purpose of that particular function. So you have to write a set of statements that are going to solve or that are going to serve the purpose of that particular task that is expected from that function. And it's actually having a syntax of starting it with a keyword def. So def is a short form of a definition. So to differentiate a function call from function definition, we are using the keyword def followed by the name of the function. So the name of the function is actually the user defined name. It's a name or identifier uh, created by the user to identify that particular function. So it's simply called as function name. Then a set of parentheses. So this set of parentheses is mainly used to have optional parameters. So the values passed to this function definition are optional. That means the function may take parameters or may not take parameters. So here in this syntax example, there are two parameters and some etc. is actually mentioned. That means it can take 1 to or sorry 0 to n number of parameters. So a function even may not take parameters. It's not an issue, right? After that, within set of curly braces, we are mentioning three important components in the function. First one, function docstring, and actually one important thing is here that curly braces is not there in the definition. Okay, but just to enable you people to understand that what are things coming under this definition of a function, I mentioned the curly braces, but they are not there in the function definitions. But the thing is, the definition of the function is actually having a header. The first line, def function name, then within set of parentheses, a set of parameters mentioned, and it ends with a colon symbol. So what is the purpose of that colon symbol? Is actually to say that it's a block. A block is started. Okay, and then within that function, three important components are there. So number one, a function a docstring. So what is a docstring? So I will explain that. Then body of the function, that means a set of statements that is going to implement the purpose of that function. And finally a return expression. So return expression is a return statement that is used to return the value processed by this function. So set to def keyword denotes the definition of the function. So since this definition, def keyword is denoting the definition of the function, then function name is the user defined the name to identify the function. Then parameter is the value that is going to be processed by this function, and it's an optional value. So a function may take parameter or may not take parameter. Then finally a return statement that is used to return the result calculated by that function's execution. Now, let us have a sample definition of a function. So, I assume that I am writing a function add that will take two parameters and it will return the sum of the two parameters. Now, let me write the code in idle. Def is actually the keyword, and after that, I am writing the name of the function. So, def add, then within set of parentheses, I'm going to pass two values or two values or two parameters that are going to be added or processed by this function. Let me assume that the names of that parameters are a and b separated by comma. Now you see, I place a colon at the end of the header of this function. So this is the header of the function. So the whole function's definition is having a header, so that header is actually the first line, and that ends with a colon. What is the purpose of this colon? As I told you, it's to denote that a block. So what's a block? Block is actually a collection of statements uh, that belongs to a particular entity. For example, a block of a function, a block of a class, right? It's like that. If you want to mention a block of some entity, you can use colon, or you can mention block of statements in an decision making structure. A block of statements belong to a particular loop, right? Everything can be mentioned, okay, in the form of putting a semicolon at the end of that header. Now, once you press enter, automatically the cursor is coming to the next line, and it's leaving a space. So you can assume that it's a single tab space left, okay, from the beginning of the screen, okay, from the initial point of the screen, and it's called indentation. So what is indentation? Suppose if you are writing a collection of statements, to differentiate a statement that belongs to this add function from a statement that is not belonging to this add function, you have to use a sum scheme. In other programming languages, for example, C or C++ or Java, if you want to differentiate a set of statements belong to a particular block, whether it's a function or class or no any block entity or even looping structure, you will use set of curly braces. So any set of statements written within a set of opening and closing curly braces, set of curly braces is considered as a block. But in Python, we are not using any curly braces scheme or system. So to differentiate a set of statements in a program, belong to a particular block, differentiated from other statements which are not belonging to that block, we are using indentation. Python idle is capable of providing that auto indentation. That means once you press enter after this colon symbol, automatically that indentation is created by Python idle itself. Now, whatever you are writing in this indentation, with this indentation, or no, that all the statements with this indentation belong to that particular function add. Let me write a simple code. I'm creating as variable C, and that is going to store the sum of A and B. And last statement in any function will be returned. So how can you assess that, right? Suppose if I type C equal to A plus B and I press enter, you see the control or the cursor is moving to the next line, but again it is leaving the indentation automatically, right? But if you see return statement, so return, then C, for example, if I press enter now the cursor will not move to the next line. It will move to the next line, but at the same time it will not leave the indentation automatically. See, the cursor is moving to the beginning of the screen. That means by default, Python functions are ending with return statements. Right? If you mention a return statement in a Python function, then that is the end of the function. assumed by the Python interpreter. Right? Now what I do is, this is what the definition. Now let us move to the next content. Next one is, you are writing the function, but there is no use in that with that function if you are not using it. Okay, right? So definition of the function is there, but if you are not using that function for the required purpose, then there is no use for that function. How to make a function usable? So just by invoke a function and call a function. So what does function call or what does function invocation is? It's a process of making a function execute. So execute means all the set of statements within that function's body to be executed, and then get the result out of the function's execution. That is what called function call. So syntax of calling a function is function name, then followed by a set of parameters. But here we have to say that it's not only parameters, it's arguments. Actually, in Python, if you are saying that parameters, any set of values that are mentioned within the function definition are called parameters, and any set of values that are passed to the function call are called as arguments. So Python is very clear about the terms which are used to differentiate the values passed to the function definition and values passed to the function call. Now you can understand that why I purposely doing it is, you cannot interchangeably use parameters and arguments in Python. Here parameters denotes the set of values you are specified in the function definition, and arguments are the terms or the values which are passed when you are calling the function. So function name, then the set of arguments, and you have to press enter. Automatically the function will be called. So let us call this function. Let us call the function add we have defined uh, in our Python idle. So how to call it? Function name is add. Then within set of parentheses, you can pass the arguments. Right? Let me assume some constant arguments. For example, 10, comma 20. Right? So now this function is defined. This is function definition, and this is function call. Now let me run the program. So run module, and click OK, and it's asking for the name to save the file. Let me give the name function demo uh, program .py. You see, it's not giving any result. Why? Right? Because I call the function, but I have not printed it. Right? So I call the function. Once I call the function with the arguments 10 and 20, what will happen? Immediately the control will move to the function's definition, and this 10 will be copied into this A, and 20 will be copied into this B, and A and B are added. That means this 10 and 20 are added, and the result is stored back to the C, and the C is returning from the function. But where I collected it, I didn't collect the C in any variable, right? So what I do, I collect this in another variable, or otherwise let me collect this another variable. For example, sum is equal to add of 10 comma 20. Now let me print sum. Now let us run the program again. You see it's returning 30, and the 30 is printed on the screen. So when you are calling a function and the function is returning some value, you have to use that value by assigning it to some variable or by printing it. Right? Now let us move to next topic. Some of the important things, as I told you, block and indentation. So a collection of statements belong to a particular function or a looping structure, or a decision making statement like if or if else or a class is called a block. And as I so told you, other programming languages like C, C++, or Java uses curly braces to represent a block. That means to differentiate a set of statements belong to a particular block uh, from the statements which are not belonging to that block by using a set of curly braces. But in Python, we are not using any curly braces. Instead, the colon symbol at the end of the header of the function definition, or header of the if statement, or header of the for loop, or header of the even class definition represents that block, and all the statements that are starting with one tab space after the header of that function uh, are considered as the part of that function or that block, and that is called indentation. That is called indentation. Now this is what the sample program we had, and we had the output already. Now every function is having a function body that is mandatory. Okay, what is the purpose of that function is written in the form of statements, and that is called as function body. Now there is an optional content provided in any function that is called a doc string. So doc string is it's a short form of documentation string. Okay, it's a short form of documentation string, and it's a string that is written to provide some additional information about that function. But doc strings are not only used with functions, right? You can write doc strings for a function, or you can write doc string for class. You can write doc string for any module, right? So this doc string is a collection of statements, a collection of characters, or otherwise it's a string that is written after the definition of the class. That means immediately after the header of the class. Immediately after the header of the class, you are writing the doc strings, and its main purpose is to provide some additional information about that particular component. That means function or module or class. So this doc string is normally written within set of triple quotes. Okay, so any string that is written after the definition, okay, any string written after the definition of this function within set of triple quotes is called doc string. So doc strings are not the part of the not the part of the execution. Actually, they are not. They are the part of the program. It will be there in the program, but they are not considered for execution. So when the execution of the program is carried out, the doc strings are not having any purpose or any impact on the output of or result of that particular function. So simply it is giving the purpose, or it is giving some additional information about that function. Now this doc strings are, as I told you, they will be available in the function definition as a part of the program, right? But if you want to display them in the output screen, you can make it available, right? So doc strings are generally available in the program only, but you can make them available in the output screen also. So how to do them? So you can print them by using print function, and there's a function name within which you are writing the doc string, right? So the function name dot double underscore doc double underscore. So this is called doc attribute. So doc attribute is actually it is denoting the doc string of a particular function. So you can use the function name, then dot, then double underscore doc, then again double underscore, then that's called doc attribute. So doc attribute will contain the doc string written for that particular function. And let us use the doc string, or let us print the doc string for our function. So before that, let us write the doc string. So within set of triple double quotes, right? Let me write the doc string. Um, adds two values and returns sum, and close it, okay, with set of triple double quotes. Now this is doc string. If I run the program, you see, if I run the program, it's not having any impact on the output. So output is still the same, 30, right? But you can by seeing the program, you can get some information about this function. Okay, this function is going to add two values and return the sum of the two values. As I told you, you can make this doc string printed on the output screen, right? And as I told you, right, you can use the print function. Then the name of the function, so add dot, then doc attribute. So already it's available in the list, you can select, right? Or otherwise you can type double underscore doc double underscore, right? Now let us run the program again. You see, output is printed as it is. After that, the doc string is printed. Okay, the doc string is printed. So this is what about doc string. Now let us move to next topic. So this is actually this example. Okay, so definition of a function with the doc string, right? Some example is given, and how to print the doc strings in your output screen is defined here. Now, next one. Uh, we have arguments in our functions. So what is argument? As I told you, arguments are the values which are passed to a function when the function is called or when the function is invoked. And values which are passed are specified in the function definition are called as parameters. So the difference is very important, because in future we will have some other topics to be discussed, like pass by no, parameter passing schemes or argument passing schemes, like pass by value, pass by reference, right? So these are there. But to understand them, first you have to have a clear cut definition on parameters and arguments, right? So when you are passing arguments to the function, there are some important things to be followed. First thing is the type of arguments, we are not worrying about it, okay, because Python is a dynamically typed language that will assume the data type for your data. So depending upon the value you are providing for a data, its data type will be assumed. So that's why it's called dynamically typed language. At the same time, the order of arguments is very important. Okay, the order of arguments is very important. And one more thing, if you are defining a function with, for example, three parameters, when you are calling that function, it's mandatory to pass three parameters, unless and until you are using some default arguments, or you are using some named constants or named arguments. So generally speaking, if you are writing three parameters in the definition of a function, then when you are calling that function, you have to pass all the three parameters. You have to pass all the three parameters, then only that function's definition will execute properly, right? So this is what called as required arguments. What is required arguments is the arguments passed to the function in the proper position or in the proper order according to the order available in the definition. So if you are having three variables in this example, you see there is a function defined volume of cube. So volume underscore cube with three parameters: length, breadth, and height. Let us assume that length is of type float and breadth is of type integer, and float again no height is of type float. In this case, first this function will expect first one float value or one real value, then one integer value, again one float value when you are calling the function. Suppose if you change the order of that values, like float then integer, or integer then float, then the positional order is actually not followed, so it will throw an error. And second thing is, suppose if you are in need of three parameters and if you are providing only two parameters, then one parameter will be missing, and in that case also it will throw an error. So let us discuss that with a sample program execution. Let me write a new function. For example, def, then the same one, volume underscore cube, right? And it will take three parameters: length of the cube, then breadth of the cube, and height of the cube, right? And it's ending with a colon symbol to denote the block, and auto indentation is started. Now what I'm doing is I'm calculating the volume of the cube. So let me assume that the name of the variable is volume. So volume is equal to length into breadth into height, and it will return that volume. You see, once I press enter after giving the return statement, cursor will automatically moving to the beginning of the screen. It's leaving the indentation, auto indentation. Now, let me have three values obtained from the user. For example, first one is L, that is corresponding to length, and let it be a float value. So float of, then input of, enter, uh, enter the length of the cube. The next one is breadth. Breadth is actually denoted by the variable b, and b is equal to, again, let us assume that it's an integer variable. So int of, right, then input of, enter the breadth of the cube. Now next one is the height of the cube. Let us use the variable name h to denote the height of the cube. So let it be a float variable. So float of, again, input of, enter the height of the cube. Right. Now three values are obtained from the user. Now let me call this function volume of cube. That means volume underscore cube with these three values as usual. So as I told you, there are three parameters. First one is float. Okay, length is float. Then breadth is integer, and height is again actually float. Now what I do is I call this function, okay, with proper values in the proper order. Okay, so print volume of the given cube is, then volume underscore cube. This is calling of the function volume underscore cube. Then I am passing the values, for example, L comma B comma H. So I am passing the values in the proper order as expected by the function definition. In the function definition, there are three parameters: length, breadth, and height. First one is float, next one is integer, and third one is height. That is also float. And now let me run the program. Right, let me give volume demo dot py. Okay, let me close it first. So run the module. Yes. Enter the length of the cube. So now it's asking the length of cube. Let me give 10.2 for example. Then it's asking for the breadth of the cube. Let me give, for example, 5, because it's expecting that second parameter, sorry, second argument is actually an integer argument. Third one is height of the cube, for example, 7.8. Now all the three values are given. Now the function is behaving properly because we provided the values in the proper order and according to the definition of the function in the proper with the proper types. Now let us do a little change. Right, let us do a little change in the program. Right, you see, when I am calling the function, uh, what I do is I am changing the order of parameters. So first I am passing the height, then I am passing the breadth. So length is in the same position, but height and breadth are just swapped, so their positions are changed. So what will happen? So length is of type float, so it's proper. So first length, okay, it's float. Then it's expecting integer value as a second argument, but here when I pass height, it's a float value. So float value will go as a second value, and then for the third, again it will expect float, but it will pass as integer because actually breadth is type integer, right? So now let us check how it is working. Enter the length of the cube, again I'm giving 10.2, and enter the height, breadth of the cube, it is 5, and height of the cube is 7.8. right, it's calculating. Okay, in that case it is type converting it properly. Okay, it's type converting it properly, right. Now actually the thing is, let me miss one argument. Okay, let me miss one argument. So I am missing one argument. So there are three arguments expected, but I am providing only two arguments. Okay, I am providing only two arguments. So let me run the program again. Okay, let me close it and for the space. Okay, right. Run the program again. Enter the length of the cube, for example 10.2. Enter the breadth of the cube, it's asking for the breadth of the cube, then height of the cube 7.8, but still it's passing only two parameters. You see, now it's showing an error because this function's definition actually expects three parameters. The function's definition expects three parameters, but at the same time you are providing only two parameters. So if, actually the number of arguments you are passing, this is argument, you are call when you are calling the function, you are passing arguments, and the number of arguments should match the number of arguments should match the number of arguments in the definition. That means the parameters in the definition, right? But here expected three, but no, only two are provided. So what error it is throwing? It is throwing the error volume cube missing one required positional argument height, right? So this is what generally happens when you are missing one argument. Okay, you see, yes, volume cube is missing one required positional argument height. Okay, so if you are missing any one of the argument, that particular argument will be immediately reported. Okay, and one more thing is, uh, sometimes it will throw the error when you are changing the type of values also. Okay, if you are changing the type of values also, it will show an error. Let me show a sample on it. Okay, right. Actually, let me correct it again. So L B then H. Right. You see, let me run the program. So enter the length of the cube. Actually, it is expecting a float value first. So let me give 10.2. Then enter the breadth of the cube. So breadth of the cube is defined as an integer value. Let me give a float value again. So 10.5. Then you see, when I press actually a float value, there itself actually invalid literal is shown, because when you are expecting an integer value by the input statement and you are passing the float value, so it's not at all accepted. So two things are possible. One is actually when you are passing and different type of value, there is also a problem. And second thing is when you are missing any one of the parameter or argument, there also it's showing an error. One required positional argument or two required positional arguments. So it will report the number of positional arguments required by this function. So what is actually required is you want to pass the arguments to the function's call according to the definition of the function. That is very, very important. Otherwise, it will show an error. Now, even though you are missing one or two arguments in the function, right? Python is providing some scheme to handle it and to continue the order of execution, or continue the execution of the program, right? How can you do this? By using default arguments. Okay, you can use default arguments, right? So suppose if you are not providing, if the user of the program is not supplying any value, or if any of the function call is missing one or two arguments, then we can make some default value to be assigned to that parameter when the function is getting executed. So what is default arguments is a parameter specified in the function call with a default value, right? And which is used when the value expected during the function call is not supplied or passed to it. Let us have a small example for it. In the same case, right? what I do is, as I told you, I miss the breadth. Okay, I miss the breadth. So that means I am instead of instead of passing three arguments expected by the function, I am passing only two parameters or two arguments. But still, I can make it work by assigning a default value to this parameter breadth. So even if the user is not passing that parameter, that value 10 will be assumed as the value of breadth. So how it will happen is, if you are passing a value, then that value will be considered. Okay. Initially, let me have this value supplied to it. Okay. Right. Now all the three values are supplied to the function. Let us run the program. Right. You see, this is an important thing I have to inform you, right? Because we can use default arguments, but one important thing is the default arguments when you are using the non-default arguments should not follow the default argument. That means the default argument should be the final. That means end of the function header, or that means in the list of parameters. Okay, in the list of parameters, default arguments should be at the end. That means that that should be the last parameters. Okay, so after any default arguments, there should not be any non-default arguments following it, right? So this error should be corrected. This is an important error or syntax error. Normally it's not reported anywhere, but still you will face it when you are giving, when you are in that particular situation, you are writing program is in this case, right? So what you want to do is, let us change the order. That means here the non default argument should be the last one, or the non-default argument should not follow the default argument. Okay, in that case what will happen, LBH, right? Instead let me assume LHB, right? LHB. See, now all the three parameters, sorry, arguments are passed, right? But even though there is a default argument, so how the program behaves, right? Let me give the values by running the program. It's asking the length of the cube. Let me give 10.0, right? Then height, breadth of the cube 10, then height of the cube, for example, 10.0. You see, the function is working properly. That means what you want to understand from this is, when I pass all the three arguments 10, 10, 10.0, 10, 10.0, right? It is taking the default, it's not taking the default value, it is taking the original value passed by the user. Okay, so when you are having a default value, even though the default value is there, if you are passing the value for that argument, that value only will be considered, right? Suppose let me no missing this. Let me missing this, right? Now breadth is actually missing. Okay, breadth is actually missing. In that case, only provided with height. Okay, I'm providing only height. Breadth is missing, and for breadth, let me assume a different value. For example, 5. Okay, let me assume a different value 5 as the default value for breadth. So what is expected, if you are missing the parameter argument, then the default value will be assumed. If you are providing the value, then that value will be assumed as the value of the parameter, right? Now what will happen here, breadth is missing. In that case what will happen, the breadth will be taking the default value assumed or assigned at the definition. Okay, so let me run the program again. Let me kill the program first, because for the space, let me run it again. Yes, enter the length of the cube, for example 10.0. Then enter the height, breadth of the cube. I am providing it. Okay, sorry, I'm providing, for example, 5. Then enter the height of the cube, again 10.0. The result is 500. Why? Because you see, I gave only length and height, and I passed only length and height to this function call, right? So length is 10.0. Okay, then what is height? What is height? Height is actually 10.0, right? Height is also 10.0, but when I call the function, I missed the breadth. Okay, I assumed actually 5. Even okay, right. Let us have some different value. Okay, for example, um, 4. Okay, let us have 4. So and now I will see the we will see the difference. Okay, right. Length of the cube is actually 10.0, and breadth of the cube I provide 5, right, and height of the cube actually it is again 10.0, right. Now what's the result? 400. Okay, the what is the meaning is, right, I provided length and height. Okay, I provided only length and height. So length is 10.0 and height is 10.0. But I provided breadth as value 5, but that was not supplied at all, right? That was not supplied. The breadth is missing when I am calling function, right? Instead, the value 4 is assumed. So 10 into 4 into 10. So it's 400. So when you are not passing the value to a particular parameter, or when you are not passing argument to corresponding to a parameter, at that time default value will be used. If you are passing the value, then that value will be used, then the passed value will be used. So that difference you have to understand. Next aspect of arguments is the order of arguments. Suppose if you are defining a function with a set of parameters, and when you are calling that function, if you are changing the order of arguments corresponding to the parameters, then there will be a possibility of wrong results in the outputs. For example, in this example, we have a function print name age, and this print name age will take a name as a string and age as an integer value. And this function is printing the name of the person and then age of the person. That means it's printing the values of name and age. Now, when you are calling this function by giving the age first, then name next, then what will happen? It will not create any error. Instead, since Python is a dynamically typed language, this 18 will be converted, this 18 will be stored into n, and this Karthik will be stored into a. That is what will happen, right? And when you are printing the name of the person, 18 is there in n, so it will print name of the person is 18, then age of the person is Karthik. So since Python is a dynamically typed language, it is not going to create any error even at syntax time, at compilation time, or even at runtime, right? When you are changing the order of arguments, at the same time, it will create some wrong results. So to avoid that, we have to go for a different scheme. So now let us see what will be the output of this program when you are changing the order of arguments. Now you see name of the person is 18 and age of the person is Karthik. So it's not giving any error, but at the same time it is giving the wrong result. Let us run this program, type and run this program. So def print name age, and let me assume that this function is taking one string variable n and one age variable a. Now it is going to print the values of name and age. So print name of the person is, then name is printed. Then like that, print age of the person is age. Right? So now this function is defined. So function is having two parameters, okay, name and age. I assume that n is denoting the name and it should be a string, and age is a number that denotes that is an integer, right? Now when I call this function print name age of, let me change the order of, or positional order of the arguments. I am giving the number first, that means the age first, then the name of the person next, right? So now let us check whether this will create any problem. Will this create any error at compilation time or runtime? So let me run the program. So run module, click OK. You see, there is no problem at all in the syntax and the program is perfectly running. But what is happening when you are changing the order of parameters, the values of this parameters you are assuming is completely changed, right? So name of the person is 18 and age of the person is Karthik, right? That means the values are dynamically typed and assigned in the variables or into that particular variables. At the same time, when you are processing it, you are getting the wrong result. So, in such cases, what can you do is you can, when you are changing the order of parameters or when there is some possibility of changing the order of parameters, just you mention the name of the parameter, corresponding to that particular argument with that particular argument. So for example, here 18 is actually the argument. That's a real value that is passed to the function for processing. And since we are changing the order, this 18 is actually corresponding to this A. That means this age, right? So let us assign that name corresponding to that particular, the parameter corresponding to that particular argument in the function call itself. So I mentioned a equal to 18. Now when this function is called, immediately this 18 is actually assigned to a. Like that, name is actually assigned to Karthik. That means then name of the parameter, name parameter is actually provided with the argument. So n is equal to Karthik. Now what will happen? This 18 will be copied into this a and this Karthik will be copied into n. Even though you are changing the order, right? First you are providing the number, then you are providing the string. But here I am assuming first the string, then number. Still, since you are providing the name of the parameter with the argument, this even the order is changed, it's not an issue, it is going to give the correct result. Now let us run the program again. Run module. Yes, now you see name of the person is Karthik and age of the person is 18. So you can change the order of arguments corresponding to the parameters when you are executing or when you are invoking a function, but still you can get the correct result if you are using the name of this parameter as in the arguments. So this concept is called keyword arguments. So what is keyword arguments? Let us go back one more time. The arguments pass to the function with the name of the corresponding parameter. When you are passing the arguments to the function's call, provide or specify the name corresponding to the parameter or name of the corresponding parameter. Okay, if you are mentioning that, then it will enable the function to execute even if the arguments are in the improper order. So that is what actually the purpose of keyword arguments. So now the output, suppose if you are changing the output again, that means if you are changing the order and if you are mentioning as specified in this, you see in this, you are changing the order, but still you are mentioning the name of the parameter here, right? So that even if the order is changed, the output is proper, right? So this is called keyword arguments. And next one, default arguments. Sorry, it's already discussed. Now variable length arguments. Variable length arguments. So normally if a function is defined with a set of parameters and that function is capable of processing only that many number of parameters. Here you see in this example we are writing a sum function and the sum function is capable of processing three variables. That means it's are three parameters x, y and z, right? X, y and z. Now it's doing some processing and even within the function it can define any other variable. It's not an issue, but it's going to take only three parameters. Okay, but when the function is called, you see sum of 10, 20, 30, 40, right? So there are four arguments passed, three parameters defined in the function definition, at the same time four arguments passed. So it's actually a violation, right? Normally a function cannot process the parameters or the number of parameters more than what is defined in the definition. That is actually a violation of syntax. But Python is actually providing a way. Suppose if you are doing that, what will happen? Let us check. Right. So let us define one function. Okay, def, and for example, name of the function is sum. Then it's taking x, y, and z, three variables or three parameters, and it is returning the sum of x, y, and z. Now, when we call this function, for example, print sum of 10, comma 20, comma 30, comma 40. You see, this function is defined with actually three parameters, x, y, and z. So only three parameters are defined for this function. But when I call this function, I pass four parameters. Okay. So how this is handled by this Python interpreter? Let us run the program and check it. Run module. You see, it is showing an error, right? The function sum takes three positional arguments, but four were given. That means your function is accepting only three arguments, right? Your function is accepting only three arguments. At the same time, your function call has four arguments, right? So syntactically, this is not accepted in regular functions. But Python is providing a different scheme to handle it. Okay, what is that? Is variable length arguments. Okay, it's called variable length arguments. So, what is variable length arguments? You can make the functions arguments general or specific. That means the number of arguments is general. We are not providing how many number of arguments that is going to be processed by that particular function when we are defining the function. Instead, we are going to specify a general name, and before that name of that parameter we are going to mention one star symbol or one asterisk symbol. This asterisk symbol is saying that this particular argument can be of any number. Okay. So otherwise you will say x, y, z, r, p, q, r, s, right? So in that case the number of arguments is clearly mentioned. Okay, p, q, r, s 4, right? Or x, y, z 3. But here we are not mentioning the number of arguments. Instead, only one name that represents that argument, and one star, one asterisk in front of that name of the argument that says this argument denotes not one argument or one value, it denotes multiple values, right? And inside the function you can process any number of that many number of arguments, right? That means you can, when you are calling the function, you can pass that many number of arguments. Let us define a function like that. Okay. For example, define sum. Okay, define sum. Then instead of x, y, z, that means three parameters. I am providing only one parameter. For example, x, and in front of that x, I am mentioning a star. So this star or asterisk specifies that this particular function can process n number of arguments. Now what I do is, inside the function, this x not denotes single argument or single value, it denotes a set of values. So when you are having a set of values in your hand, to process that set of values in that set, right, you have to use a for loop. So for I in, right, in x is actually not denoting a single value, it's denoting a collection of values. So that's what intimated by that star. So for I in x, so every value in that set of values denoted by x is taken and it is assigned to I, right? And now let us find the sum of it. So let me assume a variable s equal to s plus I. So we are adding that value of I that is available in x, okay, with sum. So we are finding the sum of values available in that x. Now we have to initialize the sum with 0. This is a regular practice if you are going to use a variable to add it with in future, right? So s is equal to 0 now. Okay, right. Now what I do is, when I am now this is going to return the sum. Okay, return the sum. Okay, now s is actually a set of values, and in that set of values, every value is extracted by in operator, and it is assigned to I, and that I is added with sum, so it's calculating sum of all the values supplied by the user, right? And now how to call this function? As usual, I am passing four values, okay, but only one argument or parameter is mentioned in the definition, but with a star parameter or star operator. This is saying that this x is not, it's not representing a single value, it's representing multiple values. So when I pass 10, 20, 30, 40, this 10, 20, 30, 40 is actually no it's stored into this for example list or set of values x, and after that it is getting processed. Now let us run the program. Run the module, click OK. Yes, you see it is displaying 100. Okay, it's displaying 100. Let us now that error is not there. Okay, you are supplying multiple values to the function. Okay, for example 4 values you supply to the function, but still only one parameter is defined in the definition. Still it is accepting, okay, multiple values. So this is what called as variable length parameters or variable length arguments. So what is variable length arguments is, suppose if you are passing no, a number of arguments to a function which is more than the number of parameters defined in the definition, then it is very difficult to go back to the definition of the function to correct it. Instead, what you can do is you can make the function more general. Okay, like actually it is showing, it will show error if you are passing arguments more than the number of parameters defined. Surely it will show the error like this. Okay, so to enable the functions to continue its execution, even if more number of arguments are passed than the definition, variable length arguments are passed. What is variable length argument? The argument which is mentioned with a star symbol or asterisk symbol is actually called variable length argument. So that variable length argument can handle any number of parameters if you are supplying when you are calling that function. So that's what we discussed in this variable length arguments. So with this we discussed what is function, how to define a function, how to call a function, and then how to pass the parameters to the function, difference between parameter and arguments, and default arguments, keyword arguments, variable length arguments, and all those things. So I hope that you understood this concepts, and it would be interesting, and we have to have some problems to be discussed on this topic of functions in Python. So let us discuss that problems in another video, and subscribe the channel Programmer for Programmers by Felix, and press the bell button for the notifications to be available in your inbox, and keep programming and keep practicing. Happy programming. Thank you.